Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the More Survivalist, and today I'd like to talk about, yes, what the title says, it's definitely a thing you have, and this depends on the country in which you live. There's countries that have greater restrictions, countries that are least restrictive, but in general, black powder, muzzle loading firearms are a way in which you can perfectly legally own a firearm, because technically it is most definitely a firearm, but it's not legally considered a firearm. So muzzle loading firearms are an option, and this is something that's happening. Depends on, maybe you have, you live in a very restrictive country, you live in a very restrictive state or city even, and you're looking at ways of, what is it that I can have for self-defense that isn't an actual firearm? Because legal restrictions, of course, there's people that have committed crimes in the past, maybe some that were, would seem like minor things, but that's in their permanent record. It's never going to be going away, and you're banned from owning firearms for life. You're stuck with that, and you have no other means. You have no way of ever owning an actual firearm again. Muzzle loading gun is definitely an alternative for a lot of those people. I don't have any muzzle loading firearms to show you guys now. There's piles of YouTube videos of different muzzle loading guns and such. Basically, for those of you that are not so much into firearms, a muzzle loading gun is basically a firearm where you manufacture each cartridge you're going to be firing in the gun itself. One of the best alternatives in case of if you cannot own an actual firearm because of these restrictions, muzzle loading revolver is a great alternative. I think it's without a doubt the best alternative of having a firearm without having legally something that is considered a firearm. That would be your muzzle loading revolver. Would look very similar to something like this. This is a double action 357 Magnum, nothing like a muzzle loading firearm. But if you've seen those Western Wild West movies where there's like oldie looking revolvers, kind of longish shape and pretty big, basically what you have is a revolver because it has a revolving cylinder, but you load each chamber with powder, then you put a projectile, a bullet, a sphere, projectile, a little ball, or something more modern, but basically you put powder, you load it up, you put the projectile, you have like a crank, a lever, so you lower it and you press it inside, you put each cap where it's going to be firing on each one, and you basically have a single action revolver. You have to cock each round, the hammer for each round you're going to be firing, so you cock it, single action, and you drop the hammer and it fires. It is nothing like a modern revolver or a modern pistol, but it's very, very close in terms of as close as you could possibly get without having a legal, what's legally considered a firearm in many places. You have a gun that, muzzle loading is a huge world. There's muzzle loading fans, there's guys dedicated to this sort of thing, muzzle loading rifles, muzzle loading shotguns, muzzle loading revolvers or pistols, single shots. But if you have one of these and you know what you're doing, you are a little bit of a amateur in this sort of things, you can prepare a revolver. You seal each chamber very carefully with grease and such. You have synthetic ones, they're going to be lasting for a very long time. So you load your revolver, you have it ready, and you have 5 or 6 shots ready to go, which is a lot better than nothing. Some of the questions I've been getting lately, especially on Instagram, are, Fernando, I cannot own a firearm because of my country, because of legal restrictions that I have. I want to buy a crossbow. I want to buy a bow and arrow. I want to buy I have an axe or a machete for home defense. This is what I have because I cannot own actual firearms. Look into the law in your given country. If muzzle loading is an option for you, that is by far your best shot, pun intended and all, but if that's your best shot at having something that's a firearm perfectly legal in many places without any sort of restriction, yet again, check your local laws, but in most places there's a good chance that a muzzle loading firearm is perfectly legal for you, and if you cannot own something like this, that is as close as you're going to be getting, and it's actually a pretty decent weapon for self-defense. Folks, keep that in mind. Remember that, of course, what I advise is getting your actual firearm, learning how to use your guns properly. That is always the best thing to do. That's what I've advised in my channel all the time. That's what I advise here. That's what I explain how to use here as well, and this is something you definitely want to keep in mind. Muzzle loading or traditional metal cartridges, doesn't matter. the tactics and techniques are many of them are pretty much still applicable, no matter how old the technology you're using. But it's something to look into, right? It's something to look into if you have those kind of restrictions. And man, things are complicated and they're likely to get even trickier in the future. So that's something to keep in mind and consider. Folks, see you on our next video. Have an awesome day.